Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Leopard 1A5NO, a currently Tier 6 9.0 BR Premium Medium/Main battle tank for the Swedish Ground Forces tech tree. That also costs 8,910 GE, or around $45 USD. In this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this tank, including its stats, how it plays, its strengths and weaknesses. I'll give some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel that this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. As always, please consider subscribing if you'd like more content like this, as that would make you cooler than a Porsche driven by some random Swedish guy. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, as always, to start, I'll place its stats here on the side of the screen. Important stats to note are its armor pen, armor thickness, and top speed. Now for how it plays. The Leopard 1A5NO is essentially the Leopard 1A5 that you might find in the German or Italian tech trees, minus the dozer blade modification. This means that it plays almost like a light medium tank, except without quite as much mobility as you might want at this BR because it weighs 42.5 tons despite having relatively minimal armor. In short, the 1A5NO's role will be that of a support tank or a sniper, due to its excellent options and good armor pen for this BR, as well as the fact that it also has thermals. Additionally, you can flank and base cap, though these are secondary roles, as the 1A5NO has only good mobility rather than great mobility compared to other vehicles, which will lead to other players getting to where you want to go faster than you can actually get there. Further, this vehicle has minimal armor, which will only be about 65 to 70 millimeters of armor at the front of the tank, though the turret mantlet technically has up to around 100 millimeters of armor. This basically means that you will need to stay hidden, as everyone and everything can easily kill the 1A5NO, sans some auto cannons from the front and at a range. Because of this, again, you have a somewhat limited capability insofar as roles are concerned, but the 1A5NO can still excel in the aforementioned sniping and support roles, largely due to the excellent DM33 APF SDS shell that has around 330 millimeters of armor pen at 1000 meters and 30 degrees firing angle, as well as the great 12 times zoom on the gunner's optics. Because of this limitation with the Leopard 1A5NO having minimal, though still somewhat useful armor, as well as mobility that is only a little bit above average, you will find this vehicle to be less of a jack of all trades and more of a master of one or two roles, again being sniping and support. Now with all that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses. And first, for its strengths. As an accurate and powerful cannon with upwards of 400 millimeters of armor pen at maximum, courtesy of the DM33 APF SDS shell, though it can also use good heat FS, HESH, and also a lesser APF SDS shell as well. For its second strength, it has access to smoke grenades. For its third strength, it has access to thermal sights for the gunner, although they are only Gen 1. For its fourth strength, it has very good gunner's optics of up to 12 times zoom. Fifth, it has 3 LMGs with 2 mounted on top of the turret, which gives the 1A5NO a decent capability when it comes to damaging helicopters and also destroying exposed crew. For its sixth strength, it has good mobility, though of course not fantastic, with just under a 20 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio. The 1A5NO also has a good reverse speed of around 25 kilometers per hour. Beyond this, the 1A5NO also benefits from a laser rangefinder, and finally, it has premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. It has poor armor around the entirety of the tank, though it does have just enough at the front to stop many autocannons and occasionally ricochet a main battle tank shell. Secondly, the 1A5NO has a middling turret traverse speed that sits between 16.8 and 24 degrees per second. For its third weakness, there is a huge ammo rack in the front of this vehicle that sits right next to the driver, which sits behind a very weak portion of upper glacis armor. And finally, the 1A5NO has a very average reload speed of between 6.7 and 8.7 seconds depending on crew skill. Now with all that said, how I score this vehicle. For armament, I give it a 7.25 out of 10. While it has very good armor pen on the outset with its DM33 APF SDS shell, it is becoming more and more common for vehicles of this BR, or even lower, to have about the same armor pen, making the armament on the 1A5NO less special in comparison. At 9.0 BR, its 105mm cannon is still totally sufficient, as you don't start seeing larger cannons, namely the 120mm cannon, until around 9.7 BR, nor do you start seeing armor that will be capable of defeating its DM33 shell. A notable exception to this general rule is, of course, the Leopard A1A1L44, another premium Leopard that has that 120mm cannon. Of course, the L44 cannon. Regardless, the higher armor pen and decent post-pen damage will allow for you to do fairly well, even in an up tier with the 1A5NO. It isn't amazing, but the L7A3 cannon is on the great side of very good. Now for its mobility, I give this vehicle a 6.5 out of 10. This is the heaviest of the Leopard 1s in-game sans the C2A1 Mexus, and as such is the least mobile, again next to the C2A1 Mexus. It still has, however, a fairly good power to weight ratio and is the quintessential starting point for modern Western main battle tanks. That said, it will move on and off-road fairly well, with no difficulty in any terrain, and has a good top speed of 65 km per hour. The 1A5NO, however, is on a chassis that starts at nearly 2 BRs lower than this, and while the standard Leopard 1 is very mobile at 7.3 BR, at least compared to other vehicles have caught up, and at the currently 9.0 BR that the 1A5NO is, it simply feels good and not great in terms of mobility. You can still flank with this vehicle as well as base cap, but it just doesn't have the comparative pep in its step like earlier models have, again in comparison to other vehicles, being that power to weight has generally increased between these BRs, whereas with the Leopard vehicles they have actually decreased slightly due to the increased weight and the same engine being used. With that said, for survivability, I give it a 4 out of 10. As you may have guessed, the survivability on this vehicle is mediocre if I'm being generous. It has poor side and rear armor, and only has enough frontal armor to stop most autocannons and ricochet an occasional MBT shell. Otherwise, this vehicle is subpar in terms of survivability, which also isn't helped by its mediocre 4-man crew size. Additionally, it only uses steel armor and nothing in the way of composites or ERA, whereas comparable BR Soviet tanks have around the same power to weight ratio, or even better in some instances, and make use of composite armor, as well as having thicker steel armor. Now overall, I give this vehicle a 6.25 out of 10. Part of me wants to give the 1A5NO a 6.5, and part of me says that it's a 6.0. I'll just split the difference and again give the 1A5NO a 6.25. This score is largely because this vehicle is fairly generic and doesn't do anything especially well or poorly. It has a very good cannon and good mobility, but of course poor armor, though this is fairly typical of MBTs at or around this BR. The 1A5NO simply isn't especially good at anything in particular, and when combined with its poor armor and worsening mobility compared to previous vehicles, this vehicle just feels like a lesser version of itself relative to BR and fares poorly compared to other premium vehicles around this BR. Now with that said, the moment that the few of you who actually stuck around to this point have been waiting for. Should you buy the 1A5NO? Well, it currently costs 8,910 Golden Eagles, which is again around $45 USD, which makes it less expensive than almost all other tier 6 premium tanks. The 1A5NO is also not a packed vehicle, so despite costing less than other comparable BR vehicles, it also doesn't come with the Golden Eagles and premium time that one would expect from those packs. Ultimately, if just looking at this from a money standpoint, again, being that you will save some money by purchasing this over, for example, the CV90105XC8, this is actually a pretty good deal. Though if you are considering the purchase of the 1A5NO versus the premium pack vehicles, the case for this premium Leopard sours rather quickly. The XM1 CV90105XC8, T72 AV Term, ZTZ 96AP, Rurocat 105, Premium Leopard 2A4, Challenger DS, TAM2IP, and many others, as well as even the Leopard A1A1L44, all have the 1A5NO beat in terms of how good they are. This list doesn't include other vehicles such as the AMX30 Super, OF40 MTCA, and VRCC, as well as others of course, of which are great in their own rights. In short, yes, I do like the 1A5NO as a relatively good budget premium, but unless you really need to save cash while simultaneously for some reason needing to grind the Swedish ground tech tree while of course spending money, I would strongly prioritize the CV90105XC8 as the high BR grinder for the Swedish ground tech tree, with the Leopard 1A5NO being a good backup vehicle in your lineup, though I would only buy it on sale if this is your planned use use of it. If you want a review of the CV90105 XC8, I'll post my review in the pinned comment and description below. Regardless, I do like this vehicle, but again, there are better options out there, including even within the Swedish ground tech tree itself. So yes, I do recommend the Leopard 1A5NO, however with the big caveat that it should only be for those who either have loads of money and have already purchased the XC8, for those of whom are on a budget, or for those that simply want a good ground vehicle that costs GE for when a big sale comes around. Typically there are going to be 50 and 30% sales, which is probably when I would buy this vehicle. Otherwise, if one of these do not describe you, then you should probably look elsewhere before purchasing this bland vehicle. Unless of course you love the way Leopards play, then this might be perfect for you. Either way, thanks so much for watching. Please of course like, comment, subscribe. I want to hear your comments about this vehicle and the review, and of course the comments below. I am always interested and always read them. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.